Hey, everybody. Welcome today. And oh, I got a bug behind me. I like it. She's very food motivated, which is on topic. All right, everybody. So today, I really want to shed light on what is food trauma. Okay, and people are thinking like trauma, food is there really a link? And those of you who know that food is traumatizing for you know what I'm talking about, and some of you may not. Yet we have to eat every single day. And so, multiple times a day, in fact. So, it's one of those things where if something is traumatic and you have to eat every single day, you're re traumatizing yourself and you have to in order to survive. So, today, what I want to do is I want to really dig into what is food trauma and is it something that's a solvable problem? Yes, it is. And I'm going to share some stories, including one of my own, that really highlights this. So, what I love to do without further ado, stick with me. I can't wait because there's a story behind this. And by the way, there's a prop. Okay. I made a almost snow cone today of Dr. Maggie's snow cone green elixir. So at the end of this, stick around, or later in the broadcast, I'm going to tell you what's actually in Dr. Maggie's elixir today that I'm going to be eating with a spoon. And so without further ado, here we go. Hey everyone, thank you for joining me, Dr. Maggie Yu. I am the founder of Transform with Maggie UMD, IFMCP. I am a functional medicine physician, and my motto is you want to, and you must have health by design so you can have life by design. And part of what I'm going to be talking about today is how do you deal with a problem or a challenge like that's triggered by food? Food is supposed to nourish you, right? And it's supposed to heal you. But 99% of us do not have this relationship with food. So, what I would love to do is, those of you who are watching right now, if you're an alumni and of any of our programs, I'd love you to give me a shout out on how I'm checking out the comments. I'm looking at you. I love to talk with you. I don't like to talk at you. Nancy, great. I always forget, Nancy, you're in Portland. We got to get together. Let's go eat. I love it. Chrissy, alumni joining from PA. I love it. And so if you're an alumni, let me know where you're watching from and share with the group, what kind of food trauma you had, before you did any of our programs or before you worked with me or our team. And what are some of the results? What are some of the new results and outcomes? Where are you at now? If you're an alumni, I would love to share. You know why? Success leaves a trail exactly of how it's done. So I would love to have people don't realize that food trauma is a solvable problem. So let's show proof. Tell people what you've overcome, right? And then those of you that are new, and I'm talking to you, Red Dragon, I've seen you several times, right? Alexander, lovely. Okay, Bex, oh my gosh, I'm so glad to see so many of you here. I am watching the comments as they come in on YouTube, and please talk with me. Anytime you have feedback, you have questions, talk with me because this is going to be interactive. I am listening to what you're telling me, and I am going to be answering some of these questions as I share the stories and the takeaways that I'm going to be talking with about food trauma. And all right, everybody. So what I would love to do first thing first, though, is that if you want to learn more about what food trauma is and how to solve it, I already have a gift for you. I already am going to have a gift for you. So I have a training series, multi-part training series I'm going to deliver through email and text to you where you can learn all about food trauma. And it's called the Road to Freedom, Road to Food Freedom training series. It's free. And if you even write right now, the training series, just write training series or Road to Food Trauma, and we will get it to you, and we'll even share a link. If there's enough of you that want it, we'll share a link for you guys. That way you can just get yourself in to receive the training for free. First of all, Lachey, I'm so glad to see you. Good to see you, my friend. All right. So first thing first is, what is food trauma? Well, it's any reaction to food. And most people tend to think that reaction to food are only GI or gut related. That being said, that's plenty, right? Those of you that know what I'm talking about with food trauma, if you have any gut related symptoms and you want to share it in chat with me. What I can share with you is from the thousands of clients we've worked with and solved these problems before. Number one symptom, some of the symptoms we're dealing with it could be heartburn, right? How many of you have a heartburn or GERD or reflux, they would call it? Some people will have bloating. Like, how many of you eat and feel like it's bloating right here, or it just sits here forever, right? How many of you feel like the food isn't moving through? I would call that slower transit, or it just feels like there's a rock in your stomach. And then some people will have, pain, literal pain, like they eat the food and it hurts. That's what happens to me when I eat cashews. It literally hurts and I'm doubled over in pain. People don't think GI symptoms can cause pain, and it does. For me, with the cashews, it's in the gut. But for other people, it can be nerve pain. Like if you have neuropathy and nerve pain, how many of you have noticed that sometimes certain foods will trigger it? Or clearly certain foods when you eat it will trigger nerve pain. Okay. And if you guys are interested in learning more about how neuropathy or nerve pain is linked with food, type in chat. I mean, that's a topic, neuropathy and the food connection, something I would love to explode. And I've actually explode on. And there's a lot of trainings that I've done around neuropathy and the link with food in the past. So put that in chat and we could even hook you up with some of the trainings that I've done previously. And some of it likely is already in the training series for the Road to Food Freedom. Anyway, so you can actually get pain from food, right? And how many of you guys have diarrhea or constipation, or you just feel like food is stuck or not moving through too fast, right? And then how many people have swallowing problems? Because I'm in that category as well, where before, I mean, I'm one of those people that have a really hard time with swallowing capsules or sometimes food even. So for me, like swallowing in itself, how many people are afraid that they would have food stuck or supplements or medication stuck? Or how many people have actually choked on their food so they're actually scared that they're going to choke, right? So that's all like food trauma, right? And Sierra just said, I'm interested in neuropathy. I'm going through now. I'm supposed to be going to physical therapy, right? And well, and the question I have for Sierra, this is a really great question, is going to be, if the neuropathy is linked with not just something physical, like let's say you have a pinched nerve somewhere. Okay, that's obvious cause of that problem. And I can understand where physical therapy or even a procedure around that pinched nerve would be helpful. Most neuropathy, in fact, is not related to a single target. It's related to something going systemically in your body, oftentimes a reaction to food, right? So, Sierra, if you're interested in more of that, just type in chat. How many of you want me to riff off and go off maybe on my next live about the link between pain or neuropathy with food? Put it in chat because I'm watching every comment and I'm listening to you. So now that you hear that, food can actually trigger nerve pain. That's in itself scary enough, not just the experience of food itself, the pain, but also like the randomness with which it happens. Because maybe sometimes it happens with certain foods and sometimes it doesn't happen, right? This week I ate broccoli and it happened. Next week I ate broccoli and it didn't happen. Why did that happen? So for some people, it's this almost random act of food violence that happens. The lack of certainty, the lack of predictability in itself, it's traumatizing. Like if you think about fear, sometimes just the thought of what's going to come is what's traumatizing, not even like the thing happening. It's the fear of it happening. I think about that a lot when it comes to like insomnia. How many of you guys have sleep problems? A lot of people have sleep problems because they're like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, they already are sitting there scared. They're not going to fall asleep. And the fear in itself will trigger in an inability to fall asleep. So fear of something happening in itself is traumatizing. How many of you guys can relate to that? Type it in chat, right? Leslie's talking about Road to Food Trauma training series. Yeah, that's the key word here, Road to Food Freedom. If you guys want a whole training series around this, type that in chat. We're going to get the training series for you. I'm delivering that to email and text messages to you guys every day over like a 2-week time frame. So if you want that, that'll be great. So Chrissy mentioned here, and Chrissy, I think would be a great example that we can talk about. I want to give you guys a real life example of somebody that we work with and what food trauma can look like. So Chrissy says she had GERD, which is the medical term for heartburn. She had gas, headache, pain all over. Chrissy has a much more complicated history, and I'm not going to use Chrissy's history, but I'll add other pieces of other people's history. So example, Chrissy reminds me of my client named Chris. And Chris had lupus, right? And she had all of these symptoms. And because she had lupus, she also, when she went out in the sun, had photosensitivity. So a lot of light was hitting her. When sunlight was hitting her skin, she would get this awful, itchy, painful rash. And she noticed that with certain foods, it was worse. And it wouldn't be the same foods week after week. So this is really common. And for, Chris, and Chrissy can share what some of her limitations were. Chris was a marketing exec for a tech firm, and she was not able to travel. Okay. And she needed to travel for her job. She was starting to very limited in her ability to travel. Her ability to participate in her kids, like going to their games, going to their activities, volunteering with the kids in their school was getting very, very limited because food was becoming a problem. Because not only is it going to be like, what can I eat when I'm somewhere, like even at a restaurant? Can I go out to eat at a restaurant? Like it is scary navigating a restaurant and trying to, you don't even know what foods you have a problem with and trying to order food off of a menu when the server or the restaurant itself could have very limited knowledge. So these are the problems that people really face is that, for people, food trauma, give me a level. Like I like to look at 0 to 10. Okay. 10 is the most that problem is for you. Give me a number. Everybody type in chat right now. What number is your level of food trauma? You may not want to tell me what the exact symptoms are, but everybody can get a degree, right? What's the temperature right now? Type in some numbers. I want to see what your numbers are, right? So, love it. All right. So, couple things. All right. So, as I'm looking for these numbers to pop up, Ibani says 4. Kate is at a 9. Peggy, you're at a 10 out of 10. Okay. Yeah. Most people I talk to, it's at least 7, 8, 9, 10, right? And the people where they don't think it's 7, 8, 9, or 10, sometimes they don't know the connection food has with their symptoms, right? There's a lot of people that don't have an awareness of what the food is actually doing, right? So there's a lot, some people do have a lack of awareness. And what I want to do here is also raise your level of awareness because a lot of people don't realize, oh, let's say you have POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or dysautonomia, where you get dizzy or your heart rate races or your blood pressure goes up and down throughout the day. People think this is random, and it is not. Okay. Is there a correlation with the food they're eating? 90%. Okay. 90%. This is why, for me, POTS, long haul dysautonomia, these are completely hugely solvable problems in my world because the connection between food and some of these mystery symptoms are huge. But here's the problem: you yourself may not be aware, and your doctors definitely don't know that food is a causation here. Food is the thing that's causing the trauma to your nervous system, right? So I want to raise everybody's awareness. Beck says, I was 10 before I found you. Now it's a 1. And everybody take a look at what some of Beck's symptoms were. I think I saw Beck's post where she was before I started working with her. So, and I want to take a look at the severity, right? Beck's has sleep problems before the program. And I think Beck's also shared a couple other things. Yeah, if someone could pop that up, that'd be really cool. Yeah, Bex was diagnosed. Here's another real life case study, everybody. Okay. Bex was diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome, which is related to also a condition called histamine intolerance. And so there are a lot of allergic related reactions to food now that's really escalating. How many of you guys, like over the last year or two, have really heard a lot about mast cell or histamine intolerance? And you're like, what the heck is this about? And so one of the problems here is that so many foods would cause horrid allergic reactions, right? And it was terrifying. So when you're looking at people who have allergic related, they think mostly or only allergic related diagnosis, like mast cell activation or histamine intolerance, people tend to go to see the allergist. They tend to go see the allergist. And the allergist will do what's a blood test or a skin test, a test what's called IgE, immediate anaphylactic type allergic reactions. And unfortunately, that doesn't identify all the things that you're actually reacting to. I'm curious how many people with mast cell or histamine intolerance here have gone to the allergist and their GI doctor and have gone through the regular skin testing, like with 100, 200 skin pricks or the blood test, and it did not identify all the things that was actually triggering their mast cell or histamine intolerance. Type in chat, because this is the common experience that a lot of people do. I do specialize in mast cell and histamine intolerance. I've done a lot of trainings around it, and it is part of the Road to Food Freedom training series. So if you want more trainings around mast cell histamine intolerance, type that in chat, right? All right. And Jimmy here just mentioned that he had 9 out of 10 symptoms, and then I missed a little bit of what he said right after that. He hasn't eaten in 3 days. I feel better because I'm scared to eat. So that's the other piece of this, right? So if food is the enemy, food is inflicting the trauma, one of the solutions that people have, one of the only solutions people have, what Jimmy is doing, you don't eat. You don't eat. And another form of this would be elimination diet, right? Where people would eliminate, oh, you have lupus? Let's go, and you have photosensitivity and you're reacting to food and makes your rash worse. Let's go on the AIP diet. And if you look at the AIP diet, you're literally eliminating sometimes 80 to 90% of someone's normal diet, and in order to try to, help with food trauma. Unfortunately, I have done trainings around why elimination diets don't work, and they certainly do not work long term. So, one of the things that Jimmy is highlighting is he's literally eliminating food for 3 days. And I'm sure he feels better during those 3 days because the food isn't coming in to traumatize him. But at the same time, can you live like that? How much weight has he lost? How much fatigue, brain fog, how much hormonal crash has that caused, right? So, this is where food becoming trauma becomes a bigger problem where someone's general health, they might be losing strength, the muscles may actually be atrophying, getting weak, the coordination and balance may go out with these extreme elimination diets, or even trying to avoid food, right? How many people are down to like 5 or 6 foods here? And how many people are down to like, I eat once every 3 days or something here, right? This is Jimmy's story is not unusual. It's the norm, right? Beck says, I saw an allergist and I tried everything in so many tests. All I got diagnosed was she got the diagnosis of mast cell, but little relief. She only ate 15 foods. Okay, so that's Beck's. There we go. So she went to the allergist for her mast cell to deal with her food trauma. I don't know what the testing results reviewed for Beck's. I mean, and if you want to share, you could share. But she was down to only eating 15 foods and she still wasn't getting better. Here's the problem. Maybe you do testing with allergists. Maybe you go on extreme elimination diet. If that worked, that's great. But if it doesn't, that's a big health problem that you have now. And for most people, unfortunately, that's the case. So how many people here are dealing with mast cell and histamine? Type in chat, right? So I want to ask now, do you guys have a better sense right now of what food trauma is, right? And Bex found out that now, okay, so here, Bex is a typical person I work with. So diagnosed with mast cell, had allergist testing, might have been told a ton of things or nothing was a problem. But regardless, she was down to 15 foods. And then she worked with me. And we're going to talk about what the solution looked like for Bex. And I'm going to review that because we want to solve this problem. I'm not here just to dig in on the problem. I want to solve the problem. So now she says she's only avoiding, go back to the solution on Bex. She says the only food she's avoiding is gluten and what, 1 or 2 other foods? 3 allergies, okay? Gluten and 3 other allergies. That's it. 4 main things. That's it, okay? And she's getting better. And that's, to me, the contrarian approach to most of the food trauma that people have. Most people think that with food trauma, I need to eliminate more shit to get better. And I'm going to go the opposite way because everybody I work with, I use 100% of your data and your history to add back food most of the time, more and more food most of the time. You're like, how do you do that? So let's talk it through. How many of you guys would like to hear how how do you think Beck solved her food trauma? What have you done to try to solve your food trauma? Did you try something besides what I've tried, right? What most of our clients have tried, right? What we just talked about, right? Did you try something that worked or did you try something that didn't work? Type in chat, right? So let's talk about how I would go about solving a problem like this, right? And for me, it was, how many years have I been in practice? I think I'm hitting 28. By the way, back to the green elixir. Here's the prop. Ooh, yum. Okay, yum. I want you guys to guess what's in my green elixir today, okay? Because I've done this before in a live, and everybody in my program that I've worked with have heard me make some of my green drinks and my green elixir. If you were here on my one of my last lives where I talked about the green elixir, what do you guys think is in this? There's definitely ice. I blended it. All right, everybody, let's talk. All right. One of the first things that I want to point out, the reason that people have food trauma, it's not always the devil you know, it's the devil you don't know. Write that down right now. It's not always the devil you know, it's oftentimes the devil you don't know. And in dealing with food trauma, no matter whether you're mast cell, whether you're irritable bowel syndrome, or whether you're POTS or autoimmune disease, and you react to food, it doesn't matter what the underlying diagnosis is. But if you have food trauma, all of you are level 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. At least 50% of the reaction to the food, it's not food allergy related, which means the other 50% is food allergy related. But most people just think it's all about the food allergy and that's all it is. And that's why they eliminate more and more and more foods, right? So if it's not food allergy related, do you know what it is? What do you think it is? Okay. If 50%, like looking at Jimmy's case, and I don't know Jimmy, But I wonder, like most of the time, people in Jimmy's situation where he's like, I'm so traumatized by food, I haven't eaten in 3 days, and that's what makes it feel better. Like most of the time, the assumption is I'm allergic to a lot of foods, and that food allergy is the main or only problem. How many of you guys have thought that, right? And then you go and hit up doctors who don't believe you anyway, right? But I'm going to tell you, you're 50% right. Okay. Now, what's the devil you don't know? Does anyone know what the devil you don't know is? Okay. Come on, alumni. Do you know what the devil they don't know is? So, the real reason that the devil you don't know that's causing your food trauma and food related reactions is digestion. Woo! Barbara Reed, I love you. Thank you. Barbara, I love you. Thank you. So, digestion is a major problem. So, I talk about this in a ton of my trainings and a ton of my videos. People who have food trauma, uh, they innately are born, just so you guys think about this from a scientific standpoint. Okay, I'm going to prove it to you. Okay. When we're born, imagine all of us have 10 steps in digestion, right? And certain individuals are born with certain steps weaker than others. Okay. So those of you who've had babies, okay, or those of you who've been kids yourself, think back. When we have babies, we say, oh, a baby has colic, right? Or we say a baby can't tolerate certain formula. Or we say a kid has certain food preferences. Oh, such a picky eater, right? Or we even have kids who have a lot of nausea, don't like to eat in the morning. We have kids who'll be like, my tummy hurts. And sometimes we say, oh, it's because of stress. I don't want to go to school. My tummy hurts. We have kids who have eczema, asthma, right? Hives, allergies, and constipation, diarrhea, right? Think about kids, and when you now look back in your own childhood and you look at your kids' childhood, how many of you guys now, when I tell you those are all signs of a weakened digestive system in one or multiple steps, how many of you now, if type bingo in chat, if that is linking your own history or your child's history, and you now for the first time are connecting the dots that, boom, that's a sign and symptom, that's a data point that my child or I have a digestive problem. Type in chat, right? So boom, I want to raise your level of awareness of that. So now what happens is with the digestion is that as we go through life, those problems get worse. So genetically, certain parts are already weak. Now, what happens is as we go through life, how many of you, and I saw somebody said they had heartburn, right, as a symptom. How many of you then go to your well-meaning doctors or go to your local drugstore and say, heartburn, let's take heartburn medication. You go to your doctor, say, I have heartburn, or my kid has nausea, boom, you get a script, Zantac, Prilosec, the purple pill, Pepcid, right? And so what happens with that is doctors are actually erroneously trained that when someone has heartburn, that means that they need to actually shut off their stomach acid, which permanently, it's like that medication is designed to shut that step of digestion completely off for a long time. And how many years do we put people on that medication for? How many? I'm going to ask, how many of you were on Prilosec, Pepcid, Zantac, purple pill, Nexium, and how long were you on it? Type in chat, right? And the interesting thing is, decades later now, we're getting studies coming out that says, oh my gosh, you can't put people on these medications long term. And there's all these other side effects associated with it, worse disease, because you are actually taking a step out right there, right? And Sierra said, yes, I take heartburn medicine over the counter. And there's so much in Sierra's history, and I don't know you, Sierra, but like there's so much in Sierra's history that's tied in right now to that piece of digestion being broken right now. My brain's on fire with all the connections because I see patterns other people don't. I see the enemies that you don't see or you don't know about, right? It's not the enemy you know. A lot of times it's the enemy you don't know. And so I think Sierra was talking about neuropathy. Oh my gosh. Okay. Anyway, that's going to be food for fodder later. Anyway, if you guys want to hear what I have to say about Sierra's case more, if I have time, I'll add more to it at the end. There's a big connection between her neuropathy, if that was her main symptom, with the fact that she's taking a medication to suppress over-the-counter heartburn medication. There's a huge link, okay? Now, the fact of the matter is that over time, you go into the doctor or you go to the over-the-counter and say, I have heartburn or I have nausea, and then you start taking medication. So then the next thing that happens is not only genetically do we have weak steps in digestion, now what happens is we actually will take a medication that will knock that step out for a short while or a long while. And that's a problem because when you actually temporarily or permanently break a step in digestion, then bigger problems happen with health downstream. Okay. That being said, then other things come in like environmental. What happens when we get an infection? And I'm just going to use the big C as an example. And this is why I deal with a lot of people in long haul. And and what happens is the big C doesn't just infect, let's say, your ear, nose, throat, or lungs. How many people know that it also infects your gut cells, your hormone making cells too, for that matter? So what I find is many people, when they get the big C, is that they will have sometimes nausea, sometimes stomach pain, heartburn, diarrhea. And some people will get long haul where more and more food reactions start after that. And I talk to people all the time with this. Are you one of the people out there where after you had the virus or an infection of some type, you notice that your food trauma went up, right? So there's a connection. Cindy wrote here, Pepsid 12. I assume that's 12 years. Yeah. So many of us with mast cell are put on acid blockers. Big problem. Big problem. So I'm going to make a link connection here. Okay. If you are dealing with food trauma, food allergies, I'm going to make a connection right now and I want you to take notes. Okay. And if you want to learn more, put Road to Food Freedom series in the comment. We'll get it to you. So how is people with mast cell food allergies linked to people with broken digestion? So think about this. Digestion is there to break down food from big pieces to what? Tiny little pieces. When food is really in tiny little pieces, it's really easy to absorb and low in allergy load. So for people who have mast cell histamine problems or a lot of food allergies, they have a high allergy load, which means they have big food, undigested food pieces. So by definition, everyone with mast cell histamine problems and lots of allergies had broken steps in digestion because their food pieces are too big. Give me a boom in chat if that resonated with you or that connected with you, right? And think about it. If you have mast cell and then you're actually on a medication to turn off the stomach acid is there to break food into tinier, tinier pieces. And now you have all this undigested food that are more allergens presenting to your immune system. And now your immune system is going, oh my gosh, there's more and more and more allergens, more and more reactions. It's like this loop. It's literally this loop, this tornado that just started, and it's circling up more and more and more bigger size undigested food allergies and more histamine reactions. So Cheryl, boom, right? So the solution for dealing with neuropathy, for mast cell, for food trauma is you have to have a master's level training in digestion because none of your GI docs or your functional med docs do. Okay, this is an area that they do not really have a lot of knowledge in and have never really taught anyone else on either. So for me, I love being able to teach a ton on digestion. Anybody that works with me in our food mapping program, for example, you receive a master's level course in digestion. So you understand what every single step is, what all the weaknesses are in those steps, and how they can be fixed, right? That's really critical. I just got a text today from Anne, and she had just signed up for the food mapping program about a month ago. And she hasn't even gone through her live review week with me and the medical team yet. And she already texted back that I'm already feeling so much better. I'm actually looking forward to when I actually go through my actual results. Just working on the digestion alone, right? I'm already like 50-60% of my symptoms with POTS are already better. Okay, so it's the devil you don't know, and it's digestion. So we got to be master level on digestion. And I have to teach you how to do that because you know why I know doctors don't know much about this is because, well, you already know. How many of you already know your doctors know nothing about digestion, right? But the other part of this is we do provider certification. I certify and train doctors how to treat and deal with patients who have symptoms like mast cell and POTS. And this is what they tell me, and this is what they show me. This is the first time. I remember Elisa was the one who said to me, "This is and we have doctors we're working with, and we have Cindy actually the other day. She's training to be a nurse practitioner, and what she said was the first time that I had heard about digestion and it's linked to all these other pieces in my health was through you and your program." So first step, right? That's the devil you don't know. Now, I love this. Chrissy said, I'm so smart now, my master's level, Dr. Maggie education. Thank you, Chrissy. I love that. Now, back to everybody else. Let's go through this. What's the devil we do know? Food allergies. How the hell do I solve a food allergy problem? And I want you to type in chat, what have you done to try to solve a food allergy problem? Let me know. I want to know all the things that you tried because you tell us. We talk to over 100 people a week, right? So we know all the things you tried. But share, type in chat, what have you tried to deal with food allergies? Because God knows it hasn't been working with the allergist or your GI doc, right? What have you tried outside the box with it? And then I'm going to give you one hint of what's one thing that's in here. Okay. You guys know Love My Greens is in here. Okay. Love My Greens is in here. There's about how much? About half a scoop of Love My Greens in here. And you guys also know I love matcha. So I also have about 1 teaspoon of matcha in here. And on this one, I decided I wanted a little sweetness. So I actually put about half a teaspoon of Manuka honey in here, but you don't have to put that in. I love it. You said you're listening, Ciara. Thank you. All right, everybody. So how would I deal with food allergies and how would I end that problem? Like, and are you ready to end that problem? If you're ready, type the word ready in chat. Okay. Because for me, I don't want to take 6 years or even 6 months to solve a food allergy problem or a food sensitivity problem. How about 6 weeks or less? Right. So for me, when we work with someone in the food mapping program, one of the key important thing is you need data. You really need data. But the problem out there for dealing with food sensitivities is a lack of accurate data. Number one is the allergist isn't testing for food sensitivity. All they're testing for is anaphylactic type of food reactions. When someone has food trauma this high, I would say, in my experience, at least 80-90% of it is the devils they don't know. It's not the anaphylactic allergies that the allergist is testing from. It's the other types of allergies. So, for example, just to give a little teach here, who wants a little teach about allergy? Okay. So imagine your immune system, your allergy system, it's reacting allergically to, let's say, food. There's different branches of the allergy military. Okay. There's IgE, there's IgG, there's IgA, there's different branches. So if you're only going to the allergist who says only IgE exists, everything else is fake, well, you're only dealing with 1/3 of this equation. So here are the two devils you don't know here in the allergy category. And that's important because by the time someone has food trauma level 7, 8, 9, they already know what those anaphylactic stuff is because it's immediate. So those of you guys that have IgE reactions, you know what I'm talking about. Type in chat. What are you IgE allergic to? Because because the big thing about IgE is it's big and it's immediate time frame. So it can happen within seconds or minutes, and it's a big reaction that's noticeable. So you and I know what the heck it is. We know our kid is allergic to peanut, right? We know that, right? Because it's fast. We know in ourselves, some people's shellfish IgE allergy. You eat it, your lip swells up immediately, right? So that's really not the area I'm interested in because that's the devil you know, and that's easy to figure out. I like to know the devil you don't know. So the problem is that a lot of allergists would look at this and say, well, we don't care about those other branches because there's not good testing for it and they're not that big of a deal anyway. Well, they are because that's what causes neuropathy and pain and dizziness and POTS and all these other symptoms. IBS, food trauma, we're talking about. I care, right? So is it true what they're saying that there isn't good testing? And the answer is, yeah, they're kind of 99% correct. You didn't expect me to say that, did you? So, and Jimmy, you asked the question, why would you be allergic to it all my life? That don't make sense to me. I'm sorry. Well, that's okay. Allergies get worse over time, especially if you have bad digestion. Okay. So it's not like you're born with every single allergy. It's like they actually come on more and more over time, the more and more digestion problems that you have because you're presenting more and more of an allergy load. So again, these things take time to happen, and digestion is one of the culprits. And as that gets worse, allergies get worse. Okay. That being said, let's go back to, is there reliable testing to actually test for what I call food sensitivities? These are the slow and low allergens. And the answer is hell yes. But the problem is 99% of the tests that I've tested out there, and I've tested at this point at least 160, are not good. They're not accurate. Some of them are mail order. Some of them you actually get through really expensive functional medicine or naturopathic doctor's office. And I've talked about this. There's even the most expensive test that they run, and I won't name the company, actually is the most inaccurate. And what makes those tests inaccurate, whether it's mail order or it's $2,000, right, is that what a lot of it is that they antigen source, like how they source the antigen, the technique that they tested in. And then the other thing is most of the people with food trauma level 7, 8, 9, or people with mast cell, their immune system is already like over hyper reacting and underreacting. People with autoimmune disease, you already have an immune problem or an allergy problem, which is part of the immune system problem. So is you're more likely to actually overreact or underreact. And that's a situation we call false positive and false negatives. Okay. So, how many of you have actually done one of these 99% of other tests I've talked about and was told that you're allergic to like 80, 90% of food on the planet? Okay. How many of you had that happen? Type in chat. And I'm going to tell you bad day. You either had really a bad test, which is really common because most tests suck, or you had a provider who wasn't trained to really understand what is the Rosetta Stone? What is the cipher of looking at a test through the lens of somebody who has an altered immune system? That's the tricky piece, right, Peggy? I mean, that is the tricky piece. For me, right? Eboon. I like that. Eboon, Cindy, right? So here's the thing. You go and you say, I'm going to go do this test. And I think it's about this test. You get a bad test, or you get a doctor who really has no training to understand how you with your immune system can have a false positive or false negative or many of them. Then it's still bad data. So for me, the most important thing that you got to learn is to discover on the allergy side, the devil you don't know. You have to absolutely, number one, have the right test, which is what I've had to figure out, kissing a lot of frogs. So we run the right tests. And then number two, we teach you on what is the Rosetta Stone, what is the cipher to understand these results with you. This is really important because if you don't know what's a false positive, what is a false negative, you're even with the best test, you're going to sit here and you're going to be just like your doctors you see who is going to be like, you know what, Cindy, you just got to avoid another 80, 90% of food on the planet. And I'll even say the other piece of this is also too looking at there's a client we work with and her name is Cindy. And one of the things we discovered in the limitations in her food, like she was down to like 4 foods, I believe 4 or 5 foods. And one of the things we discovered through working with her was when we did the testing and we worked on her digestion, it's really cool to also have the testing to find out, hey, she wasn't allergic to the other 96% of food on the planet. Those aren't the problem. What it isn't on that test is also really cool because it allowed us to really hone in to say, wow, that's a digestion problem Cindy has. And it was really cool to be able to work the real problem was that 50% of her problem isn't even allergy. In fact, 90% of her problem is actually digestion for Cindy. So that's the level of like why data to me is so important, right? So digestion, 50% of problem. Allergy, 50% of the problem. And on both sides, the theme here is it's the devil you don't know and it's the devil your doctors don't know about both sides of this equation. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. What I want to hear in chat would be like, if there was something here that like Jim was talking about how the histamine, why allergy on fire tonight. Thank you, Red Dragon. I love it. Right. So I wanted you guys, I went through this, right? And I want to find out what's something that really lit some questions in you, or what was a big aha right now? And I mean, if the digestion piece didn't hit you hard, I don't know what did, or even in food allergy, how it's the devil is you think it's all about food allergy. There's the devil you don't know, which is what is food sensitivities, right? And is it just about getting a test for food allergies? And sensitivities, or is it getting about the needle in the haystack right test along with expert advice on understanding the real result, right? So for me, it's a Rosetta Stone thing. Really, you guys know what Rosetta Stone is? Am I dating myself? I feel like I'm dating myself. Somebody's like, what is that? But it's literally like your cipher to understanding a foreign language, right? It really is a foreign language to understand those results. So I'd love to know. I would love to know, looking at the comments here. Yeah, what is one of the biggest takeaways, right? And is hormones digestion more important for POTS? That's an interesting question. So Alexander, you're asking hormones. How can I get away with a live without talking about hormones? And I won't. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, right? Because I work with hormones. We have a hormone program called my Hormone Masterclass. And There's a lot of symptoms, believe it or not, that are related to food trauma that's linked with food and hormones. There's a big connection between food trauma, food, and hormones. And so I don't want to underscore that. What I want to say is this, is that did you know digestion actually involves hormones? Did you know food allergies is also linked with hormones? Okay. And I'm going to link one piece of digestion with food and hormones for you guys and put in a little bow for you guys. Okay. Which would be, which would be, okay. One of the last steps in digestion is that the food gets to your large intestine before you poop it out. That's your large intestine, very end of your digestive tract. And in there, that's where all the good bacteria actually work on the final step of digestion, which is what? Does anyone know what the last step of digestion is? Does anyone know? Before you poop it out, okay? Bone is like, I have a hunch is all linked. Okay, I'll tie in a bow for you. I love it. All right. So the very last step in digestion before you poop it out is fermentation. I love that. Fermentation, right? And that's where the bacteria takes the fiber in the food and the carbohydrates and starts to utilize the fiber and the carbohydrates, and it ferments. Okay. The act of fermentation, just like, like fermentation is brewing or pickling, that's fermentation. It happens in the gut. The act of fermentation actually, guess what? Produces a lot of beneficial things that heal your gut, right? And they also, the act of fermentation helps the bacteria in your large intestine break down hormones to less active and less toxic hormone byproducts. So it's part of what we call hormone detoxification. I call it phase 2 hormone detoxification. So in order to get your hormones balanced, you not only have to make it, but you have to break it down. And it can break down in multiple steps. One step is in the liver, and the final step is in the large intestine with fermentation. So here's the thing. If you have bad digestion, your fermentation sucks. If you have a lot of food allergy and you're warring with your food, your fermentation sucks because it's a war zone in there. Your gut bacteria is not going to want to do fermentation when it's warring with food or having diarrhea or having mucus or pain, right? So what happens is fermentation is a big problem for people with food trauma. That whether you're Jimmy, Bex, anybody, Cindy, anybody that's on this call right now, that's listening, Ciara, right? Fermentation, when it's a problem, will make hormone problems 10 times worse. Well, listen to me. So food trauma will cause hormones not to break down properly. So it will make hormone imbalances 10 times worse. Okay. So they actually work together. Right. And so that's why, Alexander, that was a really great question. And I think back to the question, I'm trying to see what is the original. Is hormones digestion more important for POTS? They're equally as important because they work together. Okay. And that's why for me, like when we're dealing with POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, dysautonomia, or long haul, we got all these symptoms with the heart going up and down, the heart rate, the blood pressure going up and down, the dizziness going up and down like crazy, right? And what happens is, I just talked about Anne who just texted me yesterday. And she's just going through the digestion piece of the food mapping program right now. And she already says about 50-60% of her POT symptoms are improved. That tells you that for Anne, digestion is a big problem because she hasn't even gone through her results yet. She hasn't gotten her results of food test yet. She hasn't worked with us to review those results yet, right? So that already tells you that by definition, based on Anne's results, right? And that's thousands of people we work with, same thing. When you work on digestion, if digestion is a big factor for you, right, you're going to see some very quick results, right? And the last step of digestion is going to be improved fermentation. And that's going to also help with the hormones, right? And all these steps in digestion are regulated by hormones of the gut. So there are hormones that your gut makes, right? So there's a lot of different types of hormones that work to make digestion happen. So I like to work the problem together. Like, this is why for me, when I look at somebody with POTS, like sometimes people will be like, what's the first step that I can take with POTS? If you want to take the first step, I would say, yeah, I think working the food mapping program with the digestion and food allergies piece of it, phenomenal. And I'll put the link down if you want that. And I always think if you can only take one step, the first step to dealing with some of the food trauma would be food mapping. I would do absolutely my food mapping masterclass to master digestion and food allergies quick. Do it now. Right? That's if you're ready. Any of you that wrote ready, that's what would be the first step. And the reason I say that is because, it is fast, right? Anne was like what, 4 or 5 weeks in just learning on digestion before she even reviewed results. She's already saying 50, 60% improvement, right? So I like how quickly working digestion could be. And when you get the results of looking at the food allergies, that's really, if you're a fast implementer, let's say you find out it's beef, broccoli, and sesame. I guess you can't have sesame beef then. Let's say it's beef, broccoli, and sesame, and you're like, damn, it's gone. Well, how quickly could you get results from dealing with the food allergies then? Very quick, right? If you're a slow implementer, you're really struggling with it and you're not supported in that, it could take you a while. So timeline is interesting there. But most people we work with through the food mapping masterclass really, they're like from the time they start to the time they get all the results and steps they need to implement, all the steps they need to implement, it could be as quick as 6 weeks. And then once you have all the data, once you have all digestion pieces supported, and you start to implement and pull food and reintroduce other foods, that's when other results will layer on. So I think that's a really great first step, right? But at the same time, I'm not going to screw you guys of the ability to make bigger, longer lasting results even better. Because to me, POTS, just like neuropathy, just like, autoimmune disease, yes, there's going to be a big piece that has to do with food trauma, which is digestion and food allergy related. Boom, right? But at the same time, there's a big hormone piece. And I know this isn't the live I'm going to talk about it, right? But if you guys are really interested in learning how hormones and POTS is linked, I have a POTS training series where I actually go through that, right? If you have POTS, dysautonomia, a long haul, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's like just throwing this all out there. And I am. Hormones is a big, 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 big factor in POTS. And I got news flash for you guys dealing with POTS and dysautonomia. Those of you that are seeing cardiologists or maybe even a rheumatologist, it's not a heart problem. It's not a heart problem. Okay. POTS is almost like I would say 99% of people we deal with POTS or dysautonomia, their heart checks out 100% fine. Okay. So if it's not a heart problem, what kind of problem is it? Well, let's go to, I already went through it, digestion, food allergies, but there's a big hormone piece. So if you're intrigued by what the hormone connection between POTS, dysautonomia, and long haul is, type that in chat. We have a whole, I think it's like a 9-part training series I did around POTS, long haul, dysautonomia. You don't want to miss. And I'm going to gift you that. If you are here ready for this, if you're still here with me, which there's a ton of you with me on here, thank you. And I'm seeing in chat as well. If you want that training series, put POTS training series in chat. I will get that to you because you need to learn more. There's a huge connection. So I don't necessarily think that hormones and like if you say, do I work on digestion and food allergies first, or is it more important than hormones? I think they're equally important. And if you do work the problem together, you actually get better faster. Because when, for example, if you're working on digestion, your hormone balance is going to be that much quicker. And if you're working on hormone balance, whether that's like ovaries, testicular, or adrenal hormones, it supports your gut hormones. I know it's a lot, but I get excited about that. So for me, just because I already told you the order I would go about it. If you had to choose pieces at a time, I would choose the food piece first, right? But at the same time, if you can do both pieces together, even better. And we have an entire Transform program that covers all the different pieces. And that's our Transform Fundamentals program that covers every piece at the same time. So there's multiple journeys and multiple ways that you can approach the problem, no matter what it is. And, POTS, dysautonomia, mast cell, histamine, autoimmune issues, right? These are the problems I eat for breakfast. Back to a food reference. And I didn't even get a chance to really talk about the food incident I had the other day, a couple weeks ago. But maybe I'll save that for next week. If you guys want me next week to do another live around food, I know there were a lot of hot button topics here I didn't get to address, and I love all the comments here. So here's what my promise to you is. Comment in the chat right now what you want me to cover about food trauma or neuropathy or any of the things I talked about or didn't talk about. Blow me up over there, okay? Just blow me up in chat because I'm going to read every comment and I'm going to create a special live for you guys next week where I'm going to address those issues, right? If something tickled your fancy, let's do it, right? I love it. Hi, Fariba. Awesome. Perfect. All right, everybody. What I would love to do right now is that I promised you a couple things. I was going to talk about what was in this green drink, and I'm going to tell you. So for me, I love this is my green elixir is my happy hour. I do, and the reason I love it is for a variety of reasons. You guys know blood sugar is huge, and I have a lot of trainings around blood sugar. And let me not even get into what does blood sugar have to do with mast cell or histamine or POTS. But really importantly is protein, like stabilization of blood sugar throughout the day. So in here, I'm going to post a recipe here in chat. Anybody, if you want the recipe, type recipe in chat. I'll get the recipe here. What I put in this one today was I put like half a scoop of Love My Greens. I put a teaspoon of matcha, and I use the matcha powder from Costco. I like it. And then I put a half a scoop of our Pro Collagen WB for the protein in here. And I put about half a teaspoon of Manuka honey in there. And then I just put a plant-based milk in here. This one was an oat one. And when I choose plant-based milk, oat milk, I prefer ones that don't have a lot of gums, simple ingredients. I forgot the name of the brand I have right now because this is actually another new brand that I just had. But I like simple. If you're going to do, I like milk, like a plant-based milk. And if you're choosing in the store, choose one that doesn't have a lot of gums or like expeller pressed safflower or sunflower oil. Like I'd rather not have those ingredients there. Something simple, right? Something simple with ingredients that you can pronounce. So what I did was just put about I think about 5 ounces of a oat milk in there, and then some ice, and I put in a blender. Like Christy, you know my jam. All right, I love it. There you go. And this is a great way. And here's the thing is, I am a foodie and I love to so the opposite of food trauma would be to actually fall in love with food and fall in love with cooking again. I had to do that myself. And if you guys want to hear my story next week on my journey from literally food trauma to Dr. Foodie, I'm like Foodie MD, right? I love food. I show my love with food through cooking for myself and others. Okay. And for me, like falling back in love with food as I got through all these issues with data, with education, with expertise, right? Allowed me to have the empowerment and the freedom to love food again and to actually teach people to fall back in love with food again. I know that's hard for you to imagine right now, but that's just around the corner. I want to know how many people I've worked with that are falling back in love with food again because I see all their posts. I see all the pictures, their posts, and their shares. Type in chat. All right, everybody. All right, everybody. Let me take a look. I think that's a wrap for me today. If you enjoyed, today's was like a Q&A, and I just went into a lot about food trauma. I took a lot of Q&A from the audience. If you enjoy this Q&A style where it's based on questions and comments that are posted in the chat, type Q&A, and I will do that more as a format, and maybe we'll do a Q&A, question and answer, next week as well. So I'm going to read every comment. Blow me up in the comment section. And here's the other thing. Do me a favor, right? Sharing is caring. If you know somebody that can benefit from watching this training and any of the concepts here you heard, you're like somebody else needs to hear it, share this video with them right now. Whether you put it in the comment section or whether you literally click the link and share it with somebody, just share it. Sharing is caring. And I want 1 million people over the next, I love tens. 10 million people over the next 10 years to end their food trauma. I love 10 out of 10. Let's kill this problem now. So join me in that, and sharing is caring. Let's have you share that and raise awareness. I would love that. And then if you're not watching this on my YouTube channel, we're going to provide the link to this video in the comment section. I would love for everyone of you guys to show support for my YouTube channel. If you can go head over to my YouTube channel right now and click subscribe and ring the bell, you're going to be notified every time I go live. So I can't wait to see you guys next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, and we're going to talk more. Thanks, everybody.